Awesome. Okay, awesome. So sorry for the terrible audio last time. Hopefully this is better. Hopefully you can hear us clearly without a hiss or an audible problem.
We're live, right? On headphones, so how do you guys know if it's working or not? It's not working?
No, the headphone has an issue.
Okay.
That's fine.
We're live?
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Okay, that's fine.
So, but what's going on? Are we good with sound?
Yes.
Okay, great. You sure we're good with sound?
Yeah.
Okay. We are using mics that were lying around at Memon Studios. We are using literally a boom mic that we shoot with.
Shoot films with.
But we'll get around. I mean, if we do this,
we'll get a compressor mic soon.
If we do this more, I mean, more than anything else, it's kind of a rigor test for Zain and I. If we continue doing this over the next few days, without taking too many breaks.
It's that thing, right? When you want to start a new hobby, you try and get every possible tool to do it well, and then you never actually end up doing it. And that's happened to me so many times.
You get the best canvas and the best paintbrushes, and you're like, "Bhaiya, wo wala bhi de do zara."
And then you watch every YouTube video on every varnish you need, but you never end up using it. So you're doing. I've been guilty of that so many times.
Yeah.
This time around, I am going to do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Let's do 10 videos, 15 videos, and then add one thing to the setup and two things to the setup, and then soon we have a plug and play setup.
And let's see if this is of any value to people.
Yeah, exactly. If you keep showing up, if you keep talking to us, that's going to be great. Awesome.
So I mean the other thing that we want to do with each other, because we talk to each other 24/7. We work together. I mean, for those of you who don't know, Zain and I are collaborative partners. We work together. We work together for a decade now, and we hope to work together for the rest of our lives. And we create everything we do. We create together. We have our own niches of expertise, but we have a very large overlap. So pretty much everything that Zain does or I do, or we mostly do together. But even when we do, when we go into our own realm of expertise, it's impossible to work without the other's advice on it.
A couple of super specializations, but lots of complementary expertises. So we keep talking to each other, we keep building on that, and the idea is to take ideas that excite us, worldviews that fascinate us, and talk about them on a more public forum without the burden of being completely
academically accurate.
Academically accurate, and what is the word for it? See, exactly my point.
Academic, precise. I mean,
condensing it to those two lines that make that are wisdom.
See, the challenge is Zain and I, understand that we are speculative when we discuss things with each other. That we share insights with each other, we share breakthroughs with each other, we share our epiphanies with each other. But we also spend a lot of time speculating things that are in the realm of on the cusp of human knowledge, on the cusp of science frontiers that are not yet proven or yet not completely proven or have been disproven recently. These are things that we talk about endlessly and speculate upon. And the moment you go into speculation, accuracy starts kind of getting nudged and pulled and pushed. And
also,
we can do that.
Also, there's a very strong shared language that's been built. We understand what the other one means the second it's said.
Yeah.
The vocabularies are shared. So the word soul, for example, would mean so many different things depending on which circle you're sitting in. Similarly, we have built a vocabulary that is shared. We understand what each other mean, and over time we'll also perhaps share that vocabulary with you, what we mean when we say words.
And that's what we end up doing very often when we speak to people outside of our little circle here at Memesis who have become used to our vocabulary, and hence we do not feel that we'd be misunderstood here. But when we are going in on a public forum, we realize, and this is something that we realized in our last conversation, and that's why we said, okay, let's kind of think about what happened last time and come back. And what happened was we kept qualifying every word we used because we want to be accurate. We don't want a record out there of us lying or of us being completely inaccurate. And that's really the challenge, and it's called Bonini's paradox. You want to talk about Bonini's paradox, Zain? What really the challenge is?
Again, I'm going to pull up the exact definition of Bonini's paradox.
No, Bonini's paradox is the trade-off
between
the constant trade-off between accuracy and simplicity. That's really what it is.
Between how condensed something could be and how accurate it could be.
And how
Easy to understand it could be.
how easy to understand, how easy to comprehend something can be, and how accurate something can be.
Yeah.
There is a huge delta between the two experiences.
And both accuracy and simplicity serve different purposes depending on the use case. For example, a signboard on a road could say turn right and has a very nice sharp 90-degree right, but that could serve the purpose. You know you have to turn right. You know it's a hard right. It's not a soft right. But it's not exactly 90 degrees, right? It doesn't necessarily tell you about the elevation change, the oncoming traffic, the traffic signal just tells you turn right.
Yeah.
Now one could argue
Yeah.
that that's inaccurate.
Yeah. And for most practical uses, that's completely useful. That's completely
Exactly.
pragmatic. But a signboard pointing towards Mars, even if it's accurate, it's not of much use.
Yeah.
So-
there is one pointing to the ISS at the North Pole, near the North Pole.
That says these many miles.
Everything, and then up is the ISS.
ISS, yeah. So a signboard pointing in the general direction of the universe, even if you were to kind of do space travel, is not very useful. Then you need science. You need a map. You need much more than a Google map.
Exactly. So that's what we will talk about today. We talk about the trade-off between accuracy and simplicity, and how layers of complexity lead to a shared language that can then condense information into.
Yeah, like you mentioned soul, like if you and I were to kind of in our banter throw that
Drop
word,
the word, yeah.
drop the word with each
Which
other,
would be rare.
which would be rare. We would like again
Shy away.
shy away from using words that can be lost to such wide interpretation. But even if we were to, I can bet you would know what I mean, or I'd know
Exactly.
what I mean, like by the word of soul.
It's a thing that happens at Nemesis. Every time a new thinker joins the table,
Yeah.
the first few discussions with them about philosophy or their worldviews invariably end up being them saying something, and the response being not just by us, by everyone in the team, being, okay, this word you use, could you define it?
Correct.
And that has to go with a disclaimer saying, hey, I'm not asking you to define the word because I'm condescending or I'm just trying to make sure that you and I are speaking the same language.
Yeah.
Because very so often it might be English, but the
Yeah.
words might mean very different things. So the first few sessions a new thinker has a Nemesis is just them being asked, this word you used, can you please qualify it?
And qualifiers are like a legend on a map. If words are like signs on a map,
Yeah.
if there is a map with a lot of intricate symbology, with a lot of intricate signs, pointing out elevation and topology and water and
Yeah.
if it's a political map, some degree of history and context being laid down in all kinds of signs on a map, you need a legend
Yeah.
that qualifies every sign, that tells you what every sign means. That's kind of what we do on a daily basis. Every time we kind of get into a discussion, we're like, okay, you want more contrast, even in filmmaking. I mean, I keep doing this to the annoyance of my production designers and costume designers all the time. Every time they say this is lighter, I'm like, what do you mean lighter? Can you please qualify the word? Because your lighter and my lighter can be completely different.
Yeah, do you
meanings.
mean less saturation or do you mean
Less color density, less saturation, less less brightness, whatever. So sometimes people use these words in a very in the way that is similar to a finger pointed in the general direction of something.
I read this interesting article a while ago about when they're designing symbols for, let's say, things especially like nuclear waste. Now, nuclear waste is usually put into huge barrels and buried underground. And the half-life of this nuclear waste is a few thousand years. So it's going to be dangerous for a few thousand years. One cannot assume that the language or the language systems or symbolic systems or even generational systems pass on until that point. As a matter of fact, it's safer to assume that if someone is digging it out without having government document on hand, it hasn't survived.
Right.
So how do you create a symbol that says danger, that says do not lick this?
That is incredible. What an interesting challenge to have.
And that's a challenge they've been solving. How do you say that stay away from this without it sounding like mumbo jumbo to the generation to come, or even sound like a con job?
A bright shiny red does that in biology, and that's really, I mean, this brings me to the most exciting question I like to spend.
Yeah,
most
but I'm
time
saying
doing.
a bright shine red does that. But let's say Supreme becomes the biggest brand in the world.
Correct. Correct. So contextually, that meaning
That
changes
might
for a little
change,
while.
exactly.
But biologically speaking, again,
Yeah.
there are metaphors that have remained consistent for centuries now. Brings me, to the question that is most exciting for us to solve on a daily basis, as both academics and practitioners. I mean, that's we literally live in this paradox, in this trade-off. Zain and I are inquisitive inquirers, and we're constantly assessing and deconstructing and asking questions.
And we have had the privilege of making networks with people who do first-hand research, who spend their lives really studying the nature of life, universe, and everything, and sharing that information with us.
And at the same time, we are also practitioners. We make games, and we make films, and we make shows, and
We translate all this that we have inherited to consumable bits of culture.
And that's why, I mean, Memesis, the broad overview of what we do at Memesis is that we look at the greatest breakthroughs that we have at our disposal as a civilization and convert these breakthroughs into intuitive experiences, into experiences that are as simple as a finger pointed in a general direction. So we take extremely complex layers and layers, stacks and stacks of maps with stacks and stacks of legends, and convert all of that towards a fun, direction.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of
It's that painting, right? Whose painting was it? This is not a pipe.
this is not a pipe. You can't think of
No, whose painting is that? This
Rene Magritte.
This is not a pipe. Does anyone remember? Why do you remember?
I'm so.
The name is in French.
Yeah, Rene. But what about this is not a pipe?
Because it is not a pipe. It's a map of a pipe.
Right.
Rene Magritte.
Right.
The word elephant is not an elephant.
Correct.
The word elephant has nothing to do with an elephant.
The sound, in fact, is so far removed from any
Yeah.
experience of any biological experience of elephant that it's and rose is not a rose, and the rose will.
But we have commonly agreed to say that.
These sounds arranged in this order.
And if I say elephant run, the idea that an elephant is behind you and it is displeased at some reason and you are in the way of danger.
Yeah.
I have translated all this information to you
Correct. Absolutely.
and said elephant run.
Absolutely. And a lot of these signs are assigned to phenomena, experiences, objects over thousands and thousands of years of accumulative histories. And a lot of these are biologically consistent. One experiment that I would love for everyone to do is go out and look out for Booba and Kiki. I think we should have had something to draw over here.
Yeah,
We
we
could have shown you Booba and Kiki right there. Mayurish, is there a way we can get a piece of paper and a sketch pen so we can show them Booba and Kiki? And talking of what you were speaking of, the same thing with that record over here. The
Voyager
golden
record,
record,
yeah.
the Voyager record. The same challenge, right? How do you, what kind
How
of
do you convert
symbology?
meaning to a species that might not even be carbon based?
Yeah. What do you have there, Zain, in the golden record?
There's so many beautiful small things, everything from the speed of light being captured to the distance to basically the
You might be hiding that because you want to bring that
So
up.
that's a Voyager record. We'll do an entire episode on the Voyager record, and there's lots of content out there.
Yeah.
It was created by Carl Sagan and a team of wonderful scientists and communicators in the 70s, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
and sent to space. This is Voyager 2, if I'm not wrong.
With the intention of making contact if there is any life form, if
Yeah.
there is any, but what if that life form is not sapient, if it's not sentient the way we understand sentience? What if it's not even carbon based? What if it's some collective consciousness in the heart of a dying star? So it's what if it's some kind of helium based consciousness that emerges from nuclear fission of some kind, or
Yeah.
all kinds of life forms can emerge in space, and how do you communicate at scale? How do you even communicate on this planet? How do you communicate with fungi or bacteria? That's a question we had asked in Emergence, in our script in Emergence, which we still hope to make someday.
Yeah. So again, the reason we're telling you all this is simply this. We are trying to condense a lot of information, a lot of meaning that we have accumulated over decades of work. The trade-off at our doorstep is: do we wait to write it perfectly, or do we start talking about it and take you along on the journey? The second one allows us to at least put some material out there. So that's what we are doing. Meaning will form. You'll get a hang of why we are saying what we are saying, and the qualification behind every word we use without us having to do it in every episode.
So it's a bit of art and science communication. It's like a mix between the two. It's you know,
It's what we think is culturally important.
and art is a lie told to reveal the truth. Films are lies told to reveal the truth. Maps.
You want
in
to
a
qualify
way-
that?
Yeah. What is a? I mean, the reason it's a lie is because it's inaccurate. It's
Okay.
not. It's a flattening of the four-dimensional of reality. It's the equivalent of a sphere landing in a plain land. Imagine a flat land, and the populace of flat land, the citizens of this flat land are squares and triangles and hexagons and circles, and a sphere lands in this flat land, and everyone gathers around the sphere, and the sphere says to everyone that I'm coming from up. And the square says, oh, I know what you mean. You're
mean
coming from
west.
here. Yeah, you mean west. Like, no, that's just my right, and that's my west, and that's my east, and that's my south. No, I'm coming from up. What does up mean? What does up mean to a two-dimensional
Which
creature?
is only X and Z axis and they don't have Y axis.
Exactly. They don't have a frame of. They don't have a framework. They don't have a frame of context. They don't have a frame of perspective. And how do you kind of explain up to something that exists in two
But
dimensions?
coming back to film, why would you say films are inaccurate? Let's define that a little.
Because it's a distillation, it's a flattening, it's a similar flattening, like a map is a flattening. A map by definition is a shortening, distillation, flattening of the real universe.
Got
Because
it.
the real universe.
So you're picking scenes from people's lives. You're framing the angles, in the frame in a certain way. You're adding maybe music to it, sound design to it.
Also, you're manipulating behavior. You're on one hand, you might be using immersion as a technique. You might be using.
But everything from the tempo of the music to the colors in the screen to the cuts.
Yeah.
Are not accurate. They're not time and space accurate.
Not just that. What I personally enjoy a lot is that you use this technique of immersion that cinema allows, which is make everything really believable, make everything happen, make it seem like it's happening here and now, make it seem like it's happening in reality. But within that simulation, within that extremely complete simulation, complete immersive simulation, not just a promise of simulation.
Okay.
You lay down a promise. You lay down a probability.
Yeah.
You simulate something that is not yet there or exactly there, but you make it seem like it's happening right here.
Got it.
So I mean, again, like we've done that over and over again with Tumbad, with Ship of Theseus. We've done that where even more so in Ship of Theseus, but Tumbad we have used a slightly different technique of immersion. Again, immersion, not necessarily saying that it's happening here and now, but creating an allegory, creating again a different kind of map that this happened once and make that immersion extremely real and felt.
And this happened once, and the fact that I'm taking this time and space to say it to you,
Yeah.
thereby underlines the happening of it.
Yes, exactly. And the fact that these are humans who are behaving in front of you, you can believe that this is happening to them. But at the same time, like Chaitanya once argued to me that I haven't seen a monk who talks like that, who's as enlightened. Now I have, that's a different problem. But I haven't seen what is this? Who are these people? What are they talking about? Who talks like that is something that people used to tell us all the time. And the fact is that one is my friends do speak like that. Number one. Number two. The character is a synthesis, is a sum total of many possibilities.
And it's also condensation of a conversation that might happen over 2 days,
Exactly.
or 2 weeks, or 2 years. And
Exactly.
you can't necessarily expect people to see 2 years of conversation and take the meaning away.
Exactly. So it's a map.
Yeah.
It's really a map. And the story that you and I often fall back on. Do you want to talk about that story? In the meantime, I'll talk about Buba.
Let's do Bubaki first.
Okay. So,
Okay. So one of these, can you see it?
is this clear?
Yeah.
Do you
Okay,
want
great.
to go closer? Or is
No, it'll go out of focus.
I'll be out of focus then.
Yeah. One of these is Booba, one of these is Kiki. I'm not going to say which one's which. Which one do you think is Booba and which one do you think is Kiki? And why do you think this is Kiki?
And why do you think this is Buba?
Yeah.
The reason for that is, you.
Okay, it's not. Maybe the ink is too.
Oh, that wasn't visible.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a complete Buba then.
Okay. We'll have one set up for inlay later. No.
You can do an inlay?
Yeah, you can do an inlay.
Okay, great,
We're running off OBS.
So I was talking about we were talking about the story that we often fall back on, which is a wonderful metaphor of the situation, which is an emperor calls upon a cartographer
Yeah.
and says to the cartographer, "Make me a map of my kingdom," and she goes on this wonderful task of detailing, collecting information, doing trigonometry and
And makes a classical, beautiful map, right?
yeah.
and has all the rivers, all the hills, all the settlements.
Correct. And figures out how the space works, and you know what's the distance between two houses and the king and the center and the fringe and all of that. And at the end of this map creation, she comes upon, she calls upon everyone to look at the map, and suddenly their lives change in all kinds of efficient ways. Right? Go ahead. Anand.
Yeah. So they understand that there's a better way to get the goods to market from the farms. There's a better way of turning the aqueduct to make the water supply more efficient, and the kingdom is very happy. But the cartographer, the map maker, she isn't. She feels that she has cheated the kingdom. She feels that she hasn't done a job right, and she goes back to the king and exclaims exactly that I've done wrong by you. This is not the job offered to me. And the king goes, what do you mean? You have done more than what I expected, and this is great. Like, no, what I've done is I've lied to you.
Can you give me more money?
Yeah.
Can you give me more resources? If this has been of any use, can you give me more resources? And the king is like, yeah, here, make Tumba 2. And the cartographer is like, no, I don't want to make Tumba 2.
Yeah.
You know, that's like the delta between Tumba 1 and Tumba 2 is going to be too small. Yeah. I need to
take a huge leap.
I need to take I need to make emergence.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, take a huge leap.
I had to use that.
And what do you mean? Like, I don't necessarily talk about the lives of the people, the beliefs of the people. I don't necessarily talk about the three-dimensionality of the space we're working in. I don't necessarily talk about the temporality and how things change in the seasons, on how the map needs to be different in summer and winter and in the monsoon. The king says, fine, do your thing. The cartographer goes and makes a map that is temporarily accurate, that covers the seasons, covers the crop cycles, covers the migration patterns of the birds. Comes back and says, this is not enough. The map needs to be more accurate. And soon, more and more people are brought on board, and everyone comes together and starts building the map with the cartographer. Okay, you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
Let's do this. Sorry. Which one is Booba? Which one is Booba? And which one is Kiki?
And you do this test across language, across different languages, different cultural spheres. We have done this in multiple continents so far, and the response almost always entirely, unless someone is trying to be a contrarian or a heckler, is most people say this is Booba and this is Kiki. Now the question that opens up is why.
So let's go into why later. Coming back to the story.
Yeah.
So the cartographer makes this incredible map of the kingdom and keeps on making another version, and another version becomes like a franchisee of maps, one after the other, becoming better and better and better, which doesn't happen with franchises. But just the cartographer makes better and better and more complex, more and more accurate map of the kingdom, and soon enough, the map replaces the kingdom.
Now, what does that mean?
Now, what does that mean? The map becomes so much more efficient, so much more real, that people start spending more and more of their time in the map than they do in the kingdom. And that is, this is a great metaphor. This is a metaphor that has lasted for centuries.
And gets more and more accurate the more technology evolves. Like, if you look at this as an analogy for social media, it's very accurate. People spend more time perfecting the social media image than their own lives, their own surroundings. And again, that is their life. And
yeah.
I'm not,
because you're living in the map. So increasingly, this is when we say this without prescription or without value judgment. We're saying that this is what's happening. And this was, the first time I came upon this story was from Jorge Luis Borges, and this was a century ago. It was written a century ago, and it's increasingly true for our.
It seems more true with every passing generation. If the metaverse does happen, this will be true for that even more. People will be living in this new age of communication and interaction that will not be real. That will not be classically real.
It'll be a map of the real, but the map will be more efficient to kind of spend time in. So it's exactly what's kind of it's true even for today.
It's like watching two people talk on YouTube versus watching them talk on.
And you are spending more and more time on Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, Quora, Discord, Wikipedia, games, all kinds of maps of real than the real.
And investing your time, effort, and love in those platforms doesn't make them any less important, maybe, but it is not the real world. It is a map of the real world. It is a distillation, a condensation of reality,
and very efficient, right?
And it does have benefits.
You have certainty of life.
Yeah.
You're not going to be predated upon in the map. You're not
And
going to
most importantly, you live past your biology. I can talk to someone.
Yes.
Not only across space but across time.
Yeah.
I can go on a Reddit forum and get a tech support answer
Yeah.
from someone who answered 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Their wisdom has passed on to me through time.
And you can live multiple lives.
Yeah.
You can create so many different simulations of lives. You can experience, you can live life vicariously through the stories of other. When you watch films, you can expand your consciousness, and literally within one life, you can pack like a million lives when you live through maps.
Yeah.
That's really one of the
And
biggest functions
I
of
think
maps.
digressing again.
Yeah.
I think social media, when it tries to capture the frailties and the faults of life, is when it starts failing. Like for example, Clubhouse. Clubhouse said,
Interesting.
"Let it be lost to the ether," whatever is being said, which was good in the moment. But as a creator and as a consumer, you don't want to be bound to temporality of being then and there.
Interesting.
On
But
YouTube-
that's kind of what we are doing, right?
No, but
now.
it's going on YouTube. 300 people saw the first video live. Today morning was 1500 views. The 1200 people saw it,
After it
didn't
was
have the privilege of seeing it or didn't choose to see it
live.
live. But imagine the same thing on Clubhouse.
So there is a certain transcendence to this. There is
There's
like
certain
a record
transcendence
keeping
of biological frailty that technology surpasses.
that map surpasses.
Yes.
There's certain record keeping that map
That map
does
surpasses.
that also kind of transcends
Exactly.
biological limits.
Classical maps you can't see in the real world. You can't see over the horizon. Maps allow you to do that.
So here's the question of maps, right? There are some maps that are extremely useful. Now there are some maps that are not so useful or useless. Now the uselessness of maps, I think, come
What
from
do you mean by useless? Give me an
So,
example.
I'll come to that in a moment. So there are three kinds of ways that I feel that a map becomes useless.
Okay.
Okay, one is that it's too dense, it's too accurate.
Okay.
It's so dense that you just don't know how it doesn't have
Without
prescriptions.
without a toggle filter of running details off.
Exactly. So it's not a distillation, it's literally a replication.
Got it.
It's so academic, it's so dense that one can't like wrap their heads around it. So unless you have a frame of information, you have a frame of knowledge that allows you to access that map already, you can't access it. That's most peer-reviewed journals. Peer-reviewed journals are made for scientific peers, for academic peers. That's a lot of time conversations that I try to have with the community, not through the medium of films and games, but sometimes when you and I end up talking to the community, we are so academically accurate and dense that it becomes difficult for people to maneuver through it. That's one kind of map.
Got it.
That loses a little pragmatism and loses a little bit of application, practicality. The second kind of map is the exact opposite of that, which
Okay.
is
Which is-
here be dragons.
Yeah, which removes so many. Here be dragons again. Context. Here be when the first global cartographers were out there making maps and taking from different sources and trying to build the first map of the complete Earth, the parts they didn't know or the parts they didn't want people to go would just have a scribble of "Here be dragons."
Yeah.
And I found that really funny. And that's what many maps are. They're just यहाँ कुछ है.
यहाँ कुछ है और यहाँ पे बहुत खतरनाक है, यहाँ पे मत जाना.
Exactly.
Here be dragons, even if it's not, even if it's completely
Dragon-free.
untrue. It's completely dragon free. In fact, if there is no such thing as dragons.
Yeah.
So I feel most films and games fall into that category. Threat for the sake of threat, and it kind of invokes a certain kind of stimulus in you to kind of
Or
want to engage with it.
privileges, again, maps that do not privilege information at all.
Yeah,
They
it's
empty.
empty of information. It's just empty allegory which is of no use
Yeah.
whatsoever, like a lot of films. The third is distortion of information, which is this is the map that is actually most found. This is in fact the map that
You
is
mean
most
the
dangerous.
Mercator projection?
The Mercator projection and basically WhatsApp universities.
Yeah.
It's disinformation, but not disinformation arising out of complete lies, but privileging of a certain truth over another, amplification of a certain truth over another.
Got it.
So you want to talk about the Mercator?
So the Mercator projection is the projection of map that we are most commonly used to, right? And like the name suggests, was made for merchant ships to traverse the world, and hence that was the first reason. The second reason was that the Earth is spherical. It's not actually a sphere; it's spherical. How do you take something that is three-dimensional and flatten it. Now you have two problems. One, you need to make the map for a certain purpose. Two, you need to make something that is 3D into 2D. Now these two led to a very Eurocentric model of the map, where Europe on the map is much bigger than it should be. America is much bigger than it should be. Africa is much smaller because it wasn't as important when the map was being built. Also, it's near the equator. So so what they did was they flattened the globe and then stretched the poles out to make it completely rectangular. Otherwise it wouldn't. Otherwise it would taper up like this.
Yeah.
And that led to a distortion that was, one, scientifically inaccurate. If you just look at the surface areas, it's completely off. And two, also tells a story of importance on the global scale that is different from reality. India is so small. Africa is so small. Africa could fit multiple other continents.
So it privileges contextual information, political information.
Exactly.
And amplifies the status of one group of people over another just through this flattening of
And the same way Booba and Kiki have some biological basis, there has been a pattern of up is good, down is bad.
Right.
And what is the northern hemisphere, and why is it northern hemisphere? Do things flow upwards? No, it's just the map makers deciding.
Right. Arbitrary.
Why is the Middle East the Middle East? Why is it in the middle? Because they were the first people compiling the maps together.
Right.
And said, okay, when you're making a map, you build outside, center out.
So Europe is center out.
No, so earlier the first maps were Middle Eastern. Because again, the Golden Crescent was a confluence of three continents, right?
Right.
With Asia flowing in, Europe flowing in, and Africa flowing in.
Right. So Mesopotamia and
started building the first maps, and then those maps started traveling.
Fascinating.
And then you had the Eurocentric maps that came.
Fascinating. So here's the challenge, right? That you have this problem. I mean, this entire episode, in fact, has been a disclaimer. Has been a disclaimer to tell you guys that all the episodes that follow are like maps. Sometimes we'd have to flatten information. We'd have to privilege one information over another. Sometimes we'll have to amplify an idea over another.
And sometimes we will zoom in. Ever so often, we'll take one topic and just zoom into that.
Yeah.
But more often than not, we'll just keep it freewheeling.
Yeah, and hence, to reveal the truth, we'd often have to lie. And by lie, again, like this was the qualifier to say what lie means.
Lie is a strong word there.
Yeah. Lie means inaccuracies. It means that we'd have to use metaphors. Like this entire metaphor of map. We've used map as a metaphor. There's like a meta going on over there. That this map making, this cartography is a metaphor for everything that we are doing here. Everything that we do with our lives. Making films, making games, making shows, making stories. We are cartographers of reality. We are cartographers of life. We are cartographers of futures that we are mapping out. And as cartographers, we often flatten our realities. We often lie. We often cheat. We often change scales. We often amplify. But the
intention is not to present an inaccuracy. The intention is to communicate more clearly. Intention is to get more meaning across, not less meaning across.
And hence the qualifiers, hence the legend. The distortionist throws the legend out of the window. In fact, does everything in their capacity to hide the legend. This is that's really the WhatsApp university culture, right? The idea of disinformation relies on amplifying one information over another to the extent that you start changing your worldview altogether, and that's done by throwing the legend out of the window, throwing the little box,
and starts by not even claiming a legend is needed.
Yeah. Claiming
this is all truth. This is satya.
This is all there is. This is all there is. So that's
where it first begins. When people don't give disclaimers.
Yeah. So that's really where the responsibility comes in from our end. We are trying to also give you legends while we are giving you maps,
and hopefully we hope that in a few years these videos will be there'll be better communicators out there, better content out there, that this video itself is obsolete.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, and we can probably find more precise ways of saying what we are saying. And with that, I think we end this disclaimer.
Yes, and let's see if there are any questions that.
I think there have been a lot of questions,
yes.
But we'll be able to take on questions only next time.
Achha.
So I think what we'll do is continue sending your questions. We'll distill these questions and make our episodes about your questions from next episode
Perfect.
onwards. So I do see a lot of questions here on my Instagram, but there are too many of them to even start addressing right away. So we'll start addressing them next.
Okay, today has a lot of engagement.
Great, awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you guys
Thank you so
for
much.
coming in, and hopefully
There was
we
no
can
sound
be
in
of
the middle.
value.
One second.
There was no sound in middle. अच्छा, ठीक है. See, sound and all of this will
कर देंगे, sorry यार,
कर
करते
लेंगे,
रहेंगे.
थोड़ा करते रहेंगे. अभी बस शुरू किया है. Mics लगाएंगे यहाँ पे दोनों podcast mics वगैरह वो सब डालेंगे. So we'll start doing all of that. We'll come to you more often. We'll also the other thing that Zain and I have been wanting to do. There has been a lot of demand on this, Zain, and I think we should definitely do that sooner than later. Is take this camera into our brainstorming sessions, into our writing sessions, and into our game design sessions. We'll do that. We'll eventually do that. We have a lot of
that requires a certain comfort level.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. That's okay. We'll open it up. We have like since the pandemic till now, in the last 2 years, we've been writing and creating endlessly. We've written more than like 12 scripts, 12 complete screenplays.
Yeah.
And
the number of half-complete games.
And so many games have been made. 4 games are ready to be launched. There's just so much that we are making. We want to take you all in on the process. So we'll do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining.